Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2, testing, 1, 2. Hey there, hi there, ho there. This is RHJunior, RHJunior Reality Check, coming to you live over the internet through a system of tubes known as the internet. Bringing you a little imitation of the boob tube on this thing called YouTube. Doing a little thing on my show I like to call Spleen Squeezins. La 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 la. And you know the drill. You know the drill. I do the show, you do the complaining. If the voice is too low, tell me. If the music's too high, tell me. We control the horizontal, we control the vertical. But as always, I need feedback. Need feedback. Much need feedback. Okay, I'm going to do something wild and crazy and actually draw some of my own darned comic strips today. Or try to. I'm finding myself getting more frustrated with the whole comic drawing process as I get older. Now, when I was younger, I took up cartooning because I wanted to be, originally when I was a kid, I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to write science fiction stories because I love science fiction and fantasy stories, and I wanted to tell cool stories like that, right? But I was a terrible writer. And it took me forever. It took dozens of, I kept writing, and it took me forever to really, make anything even tolerable. I hated how I wrote. I hated my own writing. And then I found that I could tell, if I wanted to tell a short joke or a short story, it was easier to draw the story than it was to write it. And that's how I got into cartooning and comics. And for years, decades, that's how I did things. Comics. And now I've reached a point, though, that, I'm only 48 years old. It only took me 5 decades to reach a point where my writing is tolerable. But eventually I reached a point where I could write, and I started doing fan fiction. I was like, hey, I'm not too bad at this. And now I'm finding that it's easier for me to tell a story than it is to draw one. The downside of being a cartoonist is that whether, let's say a picture is worth 1,000 words, but it goes the other way too. Is that 1,000 words is a lot easier to put down than a picture sometimes. And, basic principle is that to draw you can take a couple of pages, draw the Death Star exploding, say, or some big epic scene, right? Or you can use the same 2 pages for about 30 seconds worth of dialogue. It's not proportionate. The effort is not proportionate to the outcome, is what I'm saying. Is it? It's a little it can be a little disheartening sometimes, because you're going to take 5 pages to get to the interesting part of your story, which will only take 1 page to fill. And no matter how fast you write, or no matter how fast you draw, the people that are reading the comic books are reading them way much faster than you're writing them. So I have been seriously thinking about changing up how I do my comics, especially like Tales of the Questor or Space Ranger. I'm only tampering with the idea. I'm tampering with the idea. What do they call them in Japan? Not illustrated novels, novel lights, I think. What are they called? Where it's basically just a written story with lots of illustrations. So, book with pretty pictures, And that's supposed to be the in thing lately. I forget what they're called. I've been tempted to try that. I've been tempted to try doing a couple of chapters of Tales of the Quest written, just plain written. I don't know, but that much of a changeover, I don't know. I don't know. It's too much of a change. I know I found it annoying when other people did it. Uh, there was this one comic is what was it called, Alien Dice or something like that. And the girl that was writing it, she would draw a comic and then she would write the story as pages of a story. And the consequence was I never really quite sure what was going on. And I found it a drag, and I found it annoying to read, so I never really got into the story. Yeah. Couldn't enjoy it. What can I say? Oh, excuse me. Okay, once again, tell me, is the music too loud? Is my voice too soft? Always be telling me that. Oh, you're doing a Dungeons and Dragons game. Mark Harris. Rock on, Mark Harris. Okay, we got two people in channel. That's one of them is Mark Harris, and the other one is... Feel free to shout out your name anytime. I've complained about this for ages. Is that the chat room for my YouTube channel, it does not show who's logged in. It'll show how many people are watching, and how many people are logged in, but it won't show who. Ah, there we go. There's one way to do it. Participants, that's two so far. Me and somebody else. Well, apparently it's counting me. So I don't know. I'm never sure. I'm never sure if this thing's working right. Oh, let me turn off the header here. There we go. Goodness. Now, now I've decided to draw the comic book pages. I have no idea what I'm going to draw. An error occurred. Now, I'm trying to think, but nothing's happening. I hate that. Now, like I was saying, for the past this month, let's face it, it's a month now. Let's call it a month. This month, I have been just beaten to death. I don't know what it is. I could not sleep. I was aching and just hurting all the time. I could not lie down to sleep for more than a couple hours. I'd wake up in like 2 or 3 hours. Wake up like 2 or 3 hours with my legs and body just hurting, and the rest of me just aching. My back hurting, my legs hurting, my everything hurting. I'd have to sit up to relieve the pressure on my back and my legs, and just stretch things out, and then I'd fall asleep sitting up. I would stay in bed about 4 or 5 hours, and then I'd get up and I'd come in here. I'd be too awake to do anything, and then to go back to sleep, and then I'd come in here and sit down, try and do something. I'd fall asleep at the keyboard. And I remember the sensation of literally trying to fight my body awake. It's a very strange experience, because you realize you're asleep, You can feel your body sitting there, and you're trying to force yourself to wake up, and eventually you do, and then 2 3 seconds after that you fall right back asleep. It's almost frightening, and and then eventually it'll be late at night, and I'll go, I can't do anything. I'm not doing anything, and I'll go and try and lie down and go to bed. I think, I'll lie down thinking, oh, maybe if I get a whole night, maybe now I'll get a whole night's sleep, and I'll get up and I'll have enough energy to do anything. And it's not how it works. I think really what it is that my physical condition, because the lymphedema in my legs. Well, you don't realize when your legs hurt or your arms hurt or there's something wrong with them, that throws your whole body out of whack. My father, he lost an eye. He lost an eye, a little household accident, rather nasty, and they had to go in. They had to remove the eye, and he has a glass eye now, but the adjustment period afterwards, not he was already blind in that eye. That's the thing of it. It's ironic, but his whole body had to readjust to that eye being gone. His whole body, his immune system, his all the balances and chemicals and hormones, everything, and he was out of whack. He basically tells he was out of alignment, as it were, for a couple of months. And my legs have reached a very critical condition. They're full of what it is. What it is, I have lymphedema, which means that the veins and arteries in my legs are not pumping the fluid out of my legs back up into my body. I have very poor circulation in my legs, and also the fluid, the non blood type fluid is pooling down in my legs, and it's not exchanging back into my vein, going back up into the rest of my body, and that is basically I'm lugging around maybe another 50 to 100 pounds in weight, just fluid in my body and in my legs, and you got to figure all the the waste products and all the other things that go into that your blood takes care of and circulates out. That's taking a whack at my health. So this is one of the reasons I'm trying to contact the arbors and get to arrange a stay with them, so that I can get my legs back down to manageable size. Get all this fluid out of my legs, so my body can recalibrate, and recuperate. So get all this sludge out of my lower torso. And I think that just having this weight, this fluid weight on my body is slowing everything down, wrecking me, ruining my metabolism, leaving me tired all the time, leaving me without energy. The reason I do this show is basically to force myself to be active in some fashion other than just sitting in a corner. So I can try and force myself to do a little bit more work each day, a little more drawing, a little more artwork that I owe folks. But okay. Right now I'm sitting here and just thinking of doing anything just makes me want to lie down and sleep for a day. I'd give anything to go back just 10 years, you know. Even when I was 38, I was messed up physically. But I wasn't, I wasn't like this. I am not aging well. Let's make no bones about it. I am not aging well. The worst part of aging isn't the aches and the pains. The worst part of aging isn't the aches and the pains or all the medical conditions you suddenly develop or going bald or any of this. It's just the loss of energy. Now there are a lot of reasons I'm just not taking very good, arguably I'm not taking very good care of myself. Which is to say, in these terms, I don't diet and I don't have an exercise regimen. That's kind of screwed up. You think about it. It used to be that diet and exercise were for people who were trying to mold themselves. Now everybody has to have one. Everybody's got to have one. It's the in craze. Oh, I'm on such and such diet. I'm on this diet. I'm on that diet. I'm the blah 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 blah. Got people with 1% body fat in their 20s. If they have children, you're pretty certain that they didn't have them by birth, that they probably had them in a pod or something. the impossibly healthy, and but and they're out there like eating, I'm so healthy because I eat like this. No, you eat like that because you're healthy, and because it's a fad. You're not going to convince me of any civilization on Earth where kale was a major dietary supplement. No, you're not going to convince me of that. I don't get it. I mean, our ancestors, they didn't live very long. They lived to like their 40s or 60s. But, if they were hungry, they went out and hit it with a club and dragged it in and ate it. Dig it up out of the roots, ate it. Exercise consisted of running from the nearest saber tooth. No diet regimen, no exercise regimen. Kill, eat, survive, and still, throughout their life they remain physically active. They're healthy. Here we are with like the most advanced medicine on Earth in all the history of the human race. All sorts of experts chiming on diet issues and health issues and exercise issues and we seem to be falling apart at an earlier age. We finally achieved the dream our ancestors had. We have enough to eat, and we don't have to fight to the death to keep it. And so now we've got people that insist that we go out and all this food available to us, and they insist that we're not living properly if we aren't eating nothing. If we aren't trying to live on kale or oat bran. And we're expected to do things like get on a treadmill and run nowhere for hours on end every day. If one of your ancestors saw you jogging, they'd be like, "What you running from?" My inevitable death. You know, they're like, we did that too. It was usually on the back of a saber-toothed tiger. But, so many questions. I don't know. I'm a little bit bitter about the whole health issue. A little bit. A little bit bitter about it. So I don't drink. I don't use recreational pharmaceuticals. I don't smoke. I don't do any of those things. And yet here I am, from the age of about 35 on. I've had my legs just swollen up like balloons. I can't even walk down my own front steps. I'm all sickly and crippled. Meanwhile, you got somebody one street down, smokes 3 packs a day on a slow day, drinks 6 packs of Pabst Blue Ribbon like it was Kool-Aid. He'll look like 3,000-year-old burnt leather, but he's still running around. He's still active. He's still he's a construction worker. Climbs up on lays down tar paper shingles in the middle of summer. And no consistency to it. You know what I'm saying? A little rough to deal with. I remember reading from one lady who's a Christian lady. She was writing about her testimony. She had, I believe it was cerebral palsy. I'm not sure if it was cerebral palsy, but she did. She had some congenital nervous condition. Left her with no control, little or no control over her limbs. Left her with stick figure arms and legs, and she said she couldn't stand it. She goes to she goes to the gym with her friends and her coworkers. They go there to look good. She goes there to try and keep her her muscle mass up, and try and stay healthy, and for therapy and shit. And she was so bitter because she would sit there in the locker room watching these women change, and beautiful women with knock 'em dead curves, and she would sit there listening to them talk about how they had just basically been out desecrating themselves with their latest boyfriend. They'd be bragging about how they'd gone out drinking or out drinking or out doing drugs, or that they scooped the brains out of their latest boyfriend, and she looks down at herself, and she's got she's got stick limbs that are spazzing all over the place, flat chested. She's a spastic skeleton, and she said she was like, oh yeah, this is fair, God. She lived her entire life being moral and chaste and abstaining from all these things, and well, here she is. What anybody from 100 years ago would have called a cripple, while these slags she works with are bragging about how the wretched lives they lead. You know, and they've got the bodies of athletes. Look at Mick Jagger. Mick Jagger. You know, the Rolling Stones, man. You know those guys are 80 years, like 70, 80 years old now. They're old enough to be great grandfathers. They've done enough drugs to kill a troop of space marines. They've banged enough women to repopulate China. You know, they lived heinously. And they're still up there jumping around, doing splits in midair, and and meanwhile, here I am. I've I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't chew. I've never kissed a girl. I've never touched drugs. You know, and here I am, a 400-pound land whale with elephant legs where human legs should be. Yeah, you have to be made of better stuff than I am to not be just a little eensy-weensy bit bitter. My grandmother, both my grandparents, both sets of grandparents, with the only exception of my father's father. My father's father, he made a very late in his life, basically a deathbed conversion to Christianity. But my grandmother, my Grammy, my grandma, my grandpa, all of them, my great aunts, my great uncles, all of them, God-fearing Christian people who lived as honest and faithful a life as you can imagine, and they're all dying in in hospital beds, slow, lingering death. Of course, we got those on the other side of the table too. My dad's baby sister, my aunt Debbie, she was the baby of the family, and by the time she's hard to put it in euphemisms, hard living, shall we say. By the time she died, she looked like the oldest member of the family. And she died in a hospital bed, just with her body and her brain just shutting down one piece at a time. You gotta be wary of people that try and make, see, God has rewarded them for their wicked lives, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, well, right. I can look at my own family and know that song and dance doesn't play out the same way every time either. I remember I remember reading how when the San Francisco quake hit, the San Francisco quake hit, there were a lot of theologians who tried to, God is judging that wicked city. And the newspapers responded by showing pictures of some of the neighborhoods. There was one particular neighborhood where there was a great big beautiful church, flattened. Right across the road from it, there was a tavern, still standing and serving customers after the earthquake. No comment, And to be fair, I reached the point where I got out on my own. I tried going on diets and exercise programs, but I just reached a point where I decided that I did not want to expend all that effort on a slowly, a losing battle. Because I'd go on a diet, I'd go on dieting, start exercising, I would follow it religiously, and that's the thing of it. It became a religion almost. I already got Jesus. I don't need a religion on the side. But I hated listening to myself talk because all I would talk about was the diet. Oh, I ate so many carbs today, and I did so many calories, and ooh, I weighed myself on the scale before I came to work, and ooh, look, and blah 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 blah, just gun in the mouth, pull the trigger, and it's all you could think about. It used to be, I like to live. If I'm hungry, I just go out and get something to eat, sit down, eat it, go back to work, not think about it. But when you were on a diet, you had to. Oh, was this got more calories than this? Is this got more vitamins? Is this low carb? Is this high carb? Is this ow 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 ow? And look, diets are for rich people, okay? When you're getting when you're in your 20s and you're getting by on pocket change and stuff you've fished out of the sofa cushions. And lunch for today is whatever sandwich is on sale at the gas station. You're not going, oh, I hope this is low carb. No. I'd go at it for a while. Really, I really would. But then I'd reach a breaking point. There would come a day where I'd have gone too long without anything to eat at all because of circumstances. And then I reached a point I'd be starving to death because I had to skip breakfast for some reason. And my choice was to sit around trying to convince myself this. Don't worry, this salad that you're having for lunch will get you through the rest of the day. And going, screw it, we're going to eat the mini pizza. And I've done awful things myself. I'm not, keeping a fit, healthy body is a 24/7 job, and I hated it. I hated everything about it. I hated having to constantly pay attention to everything I put in my mouth and every drop I drank, and having to worry about just having to watch the clock to determine when I'm allowed to eat again, and having to check my weight constantly, and you reach a point where you're treating food like it's medicine to be dosed to yourself. And you get sick of it. And you get so sick of it. And there are these people out there, they barely have to pay attention to what they diet a little bit, they exercise a little bit, and boom, they're perfect. Boom, 2% body fat, and instantly. And there are other people, their metabolism just, you give it a little poke and it tumbles off the horse, no time all. And that latter one was me. It's really unfair because before that year in the hospital, I walked everywhere. I rode my bike. I had to. I didn't have a car. I would exert myself to degrees that you wouldn't believe, and I still I still kept getting bigger, still getting fatter. And then when I hit about 35, my legs started following the family trend and swelling up. And the more legs swell, the less exercise you can get in, and vicious feedback cycle, man. Some people end up with finely tuned engines for bodies. Other people end up, they're born, they find out that they're stuck with an Edsel. I don't know. What can I do? What can I say? In order to get, in order to, be all physical fit, I would literally have to rearrange my life. I can't even get the trash out to the curb right now. I can't, the diet and exercise thing. That would be just one more thing to add to the list of things that I'm expected to do, but I can't, or don't, or won't, and you know. I've paid for it. I've paid for it. And now, now I paid so much, I'm in the hole, and I'm not going to be able to buy my way back out. Now, I just spent the past half hour whining about my physical health and about dieting, which I'm not even doing. I want you to imagine what kind of a person I'd be like if I was on a diet. I would be insufferable. Bake myself a chocolate cake, I did. Just a little one box chocolate cake, canned frosting, chocolate cake, chocolate frosting. It was late for my birthday, but better late than never, I suppose. I nommed it up, and I did not. I really didn't enjoy it all that much. Eating a little bit of it, past every couple of past couple of days. I made myself some brownies the week before. I didn't enjoy those at all. I lit into them, but and then I was like, ugh. Reaching old age where you don't enjoy chocolate anymore. You know you're old when cookie dough doesn't taste good anymore. That's the thing of it. When you're a kid, you're growing. You're growing and you're energetic and you're all over the place and you're burning calories like a blast furnace. Of course, kids crave sugar. Of course, kids crave sweets and fatty foods and stuff like that. Reach a certain point, your body starts slowing down and all that good stuff doesn't taste so good anymore. Blah. Just blah. But man, I can't. Danny Meyer was talking in Facebook today. That orange juice is now bad for you. Orange juice is now bad for you. Because it is 3 times as much sugar as Coca-Cola. It is fructose. It is frickin' fructose. What Coca-Cola has is frickin' corn syrup. And a small chemistry set of chemicals that's thrown in on top of it. And carbolic acid and all this other crap. But 3 times as much sugar as Coca-Cola. Yeah, so Now, his wife is diabetic, so she has to watch her sugar intake. I submit to you that what is a health precaution for her isn't necessarily a concern for other people. Orange juice, for crying out loud. Orange juice. Get out of my face, okay? Just get out of my face. These same experts are the ones that spent decades telling everybody that meat was bad for you. That milk was bad for you. That eggs were bad for you. Basically, they told you that three-fourths of the food table were just bad for you, and they were telling each other, you saw the food pyramid, that we were supposed to eat minuscule little portions of meat, eggs, dairy, and middling portions of vegetables, and then we were supposed to hork down 11 servings of grains daily. Brought to you by the FDA and the National Granary Companies. That's what it was. Pandering to the corn industry. That's what it was. A load of crap. But it's from the FDA. The doctors know what they're talking about. And every 2 weeks they can't make up their mind whether milk is good for you or bad for you. Oh, no, you shouldn't drink whole milk. You should eat skim milk. You drink skim milk instead of whole milk, and back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Give me my orange juice. Give me my whole milk. Give me my eggs and bacon and toast. And get away from me before I frickin' hurt you. And I'll just outlive you just out of sheer spite. This is why people don't like vegans. Nobody likes vegans. I guarantee you vegans are sitting around thinking about how much they hate other vegans. Nobody likes vegetarians and vegans. You know why? Because all the bullshit, it is bullshit that they blather about, it's healthier for you, it's better for you, and the vegans especially, it's not cruel, which is a lie too. And it's more. It boils down to they're making a morally. They're considering themselves morally superior to you because you eat something out of all four food groups. It is bad enough being looked down on by people who think themselves, morally superior to you, and who actually go out of their way to behave, at least seemingly, in a more ethical fashion. It is violence-inducing to be looked down on by somebody who has no grounds for considering themselves morally superior. No, you are not noble, enlightened, or more compassionate because you're a vegan. You're not doing anything for the animals you claim to be so compassionate towards. Half the animals you think yourselves so enlightened toward, we don't eat anything with a face. Well, half the things with a face would eat you. Because they're not stupid and they're not going to turn down a chance for a free meal. Even if you are made of buckwheat and whole grass and kale wrapped around a stick. They're not morally superior. They claim that what they do is morally superior. They claim that the vegan lifestyle is more environmentally sound. It's not. In many ways, it's more polluting. They claim it's kinder to animals. It's not. Or you know, the estimate is that 20 or 30 small vertebrate animals, mice, lizards, and such, birds, dies for every pound of rice flour that you bring in. They have to kill thousands and thousands and thousands of bugs and reptiles and invertebrates and animals and of every stripe to grow your vegetarian diet. They say it's kinder to humanity. And every claim they make about how the vegan or vegetarian lifestyle is morally or ethically or nutritionally superior, it's been proven a lie. They don't do it because it's better for themselves. That's been proven false too. They do it because they get off on feeling smug. They get off on looking down on everybody else. And anybody with two brain cells to rub together knows that instantly and automatically from the moment they hear the word vegan. They know what they're dealing with. A self-righteous smartass. Worse, a self-righteous smartass ignoramus. And it's these self-righteous smartass ignoramuses that have established the policies. They're out there getting laws passed. You understand what I'm saying? That affect how other people get to eat. They're the ones that push through the vegetarian leaning perspective of the FDA. They're the ones that were backing up the Obama's lunch program. They're the ones. There's some jackass out there, some mayor. Where is he? Governor of. He's pushing a no meat Mondays for school children. It's time to be hurting some people. You know it. Millions of people in this world going hungry. And these snots are getting off on looking down on other people for not being able to skip over two of the four food groups. This is one of the things in the movie Dr. Dolittle. I don't know if you've ever seen the classic version of Dr. Dolittle, done by Disney ages ago. Yeah. But they had a music number where Dr. Doolittle's singing that he's become since he started learning to talk to animals, he's become a vegetarian. And he's openly, but that annoyed the heck out of me. But he at least admitted he was terrible at it. He hated it. He said, "Yes, I'm dreaming of pork and lamb and veal and ham at every meal. And I'll never make a decent vegetarian." The only people who have lived a vegetarian are the ones who couldn't chase down something with meat on it to eat. The old joke goes, Indian, vegetarian, Indian word for poor hunter. Here's something for you to reflect on. The food animals, the animals that we have raised and domesticated for food, were it not for that, they would have died out. The Guernsey cow, the dairy cow, were died out. The beef cow would have died out. The sheep would have died out. You see, most people don't realize is that these animals, sheep and cows particularly, they need to be milked. The cows need to be milked daily. It's a necessity for them because they produce milk so much as if they aren't milked, they get sick. They can die of it. Sheep need to be sheared annually, and there's a reason because they don't shed their wool. Unlike most animals, they do not shed. They have pictures of this one sheep that got away. It ran around in the wilderness for like 5 years, and the owners finally tracked it down. By the time he tracked it down, it was literally just a giant ball of wool with a nose sticking out at one spot and 4 little feet sticking out. It wouldn't have lived much longer. They have no idea how it managed to avoid the predators, and how it managed to avoid getting snarled up in a hedge or something. They took it. They sheared it down. The wool they got from that one sheep weighed more than the sheep did. Most of the domesticated animals, whether you're talking pets or farm animals, they would not survive. They would die en masse without human beings caring for them. Wiped out. But vegans think they're so compassionate, and these animal rights lunatics think they're so compassionate, taking these animals and every now and then you'll catch one of these idiots. They'll go, once every couple of years they'll raid a fur farm where they're raising minks or something, or foxes, and they'll release them out into the wild. What they don't realize is that these animals have been domesticated, just raised in captivity for hundreds and hundreds of generations. They can't survive out in the wild. They have no better. They have these mink they raise that they're releasing into the wild have no better chance of surviving in the wild than a chihuahua. A chihuahua would actually stand a better chance. They compound their stupidity by releasing all these ferrets into all these mink into like the same 4 or 5 mile area. Thousands and thousands and thousands of bottom to mid tier predators in an area not big enough to sustain 10 of them. Most of them ended up dying of starvation or getting hit by trucks. Oh, but they're so compassionate. Would have been more compassionate to take little bastards, kill them, fry them up, and eat them. At least then their end would have been quick and merciful. Everybody talks about, oh, it's so horrible they kill these animals for food. You ever seen how an animal dies in the wild? You know how animals die in the wild? Slowly. Usually in great pain. In a state of absolute misery and often terror. The end of a wild animal's life is the end of a horror movie. Okay, let's move on to another topic. But okay, let's see. Yeah, chapter 23. Oh, thank you very much, Ben. I was troubled with that. It took me forever to just that chapter out. Chapter 23 of the Warcrafter. Seemed too quick and trite and tidy an end for Coil on some level. You know, basically he walked into the handcuffs. I was having to put myself in his shoes and in everyone else's shoes at the same time. So that chapter was, you know, I was dreading writing that chapter because having to write two separate split timelines, and all the times he changed the timeline and split the timeline again, and always but of course having the bear attack. That was okay. I'll admit the bear attack thing. I was just completely out of left field. I wasn't even expecting it. Because I reached a point, you know, Coil, for those who don't know, Coil is a villain in Worm. Coil's power is that he can split time. He can basically make the timeline diverge. You know, if he's walking down a corridor and he sees a left door and a right door, he can take them both at the same time. Basically, he can split the timeline. One timeline he takes the left, one timeline he takes the right, and whichever one turns out the way he wants, he'll let the timeline collapse together, and he'll keep the one that he liked. And so basically, he gets two shots at every decision. And one of the things going is that he is extremely paranoid. Whether that's a consequence of his power or the reason that he ended up with that power, you know, make your own call. But it ends up that every opportunity, one of the first things he does is that he splits the timeline, and he has one of his personas. You know, the person, you know, in the first timeline and the second timeline, he tries to make sure that the two persons, you know, both of his occurrences are as far apart from each other as possible. Like he'll wake up in the morning, split the timeline. One will stay home, one will go to work, or he'll split the timeline and one will go to the protectorate, the other will go to his secret lair. So that no matter what happens, you know, it's, you know, that if there's a catastrophe, it won't catch both his timelines at the same time. But it occurred to me that, you know, he had been up to that point he'd been subtly corralled into going to the PRT, and it occurred to me that as paranoid as he is, he would risk looking a little weird and splitting the timeline. And, you know, and in one timeline just turning right around at the PRT front door and going in some other direction. And so the Warcrafted are watching him. You know, they're using surveillance on him, and they realize you know, when he suddenly changes direction, turns around and walks. It's obvious to them. Oh, he must have split the timeline again. We've got to get him to go back. We got to get him to we got to get him to collapse this timeline that he's in, you know. And so, for lack of any better ideas, I had Bayleaf teleport to where he was, turn into a grizzly bear and maul him right there in the streets. A little drastic and really, really, really unsubtle. But I was just out of ideas at that point of how to corral him. Because at that point, what they had done is that the trick is that nobody else is aware that the timeline is split, so they have to guess by watching him as to whether he just split or collapsed a timeline. And so what they had to do is the objective is that the old saying being 2 steps ahead. With him, you have to be at least 3 or more. And they worked to eliminate any alternative options he had. First, he gets up in the morning. He leaves his house. Fennec and Loctara raid the place and basically gut it to keep him from splitting off a timeline and going back. One time he splits a timeline. One timeline he's headed towards the PRT, and the other timeline he's headed towards his base. They set it up so that there's a huge traffic jam between him and his base. They shut down the power to his base, leave his mercenaries incommunicado, and put up a huge traffic jam to push his last button. And so he shuts down that timeline, and then he's about to go through the front door of the PRT, and he splits the timeline again, and they had to stop him from that. You'll have to read the chapter if you want to follow this. It's hard enough to write, much less to describe. Well, whether Tattletale's power would, as long as she, Tattletale's power, everybody tells you, they treat Tattletale's power like it's a psychic power. It's not a psychic power. What it is that Tattletale's power is that she has superhuman deductive ability. She's like Sherlock with a turbocharger. So, but she still needs to have clues to read. She can, if you're going to make a silk purse, she still needs the sow's ear, as it were. She still needs clues and information. And it wasn't until it was revealed to her that what Coil's power actually is that she was able to put all the pieces together. All the odd little behavioral quirks that Coil seemed to show. And it also explained how it was is that he knew a lot of things that she knew she had not told him. Because one of the things canonically in the story, in the original story, where Coil, one of the things he would do is that he'd have a discussion with Tattletale, with Lisa, have her come in, and he would split the timeline, and in one timeline he would torture her to death to get all the information that she knew. Then once he had all the information she knew, he'd collapse that timeline and let Tattletale go her way, not knowing anything had ever happened, because for her it hadn't. But he would have all the information because he would remember everything that his other, his timeline alternate had done and had learned. And often, and that's one of the things that was supposed to be his downfall, is that because he is able to be, because he can split a timeline and do it, he really, if it weren't for his power, he'd have really poor self-impulse control. Because for years this is one of the things he does. If he doesn't take time, if he doesn't want to take time to make a decision, he'll take both. If he doesn't, if he doesn't want to take time to decide between one choice or another, he'll take both. If he's impatient for something, if he gets angry or frustrated, he'd split the timeline and take out his frustration by shooting one of his workers or by torturing one of his captives, and then letting the timeline collapse. He presented this unflappable mastermind face, but in reality, he has all the impulse control of a 6-year-old child. And that was how they got him, and that was how they knew how to get him to drop a timeline that they didn't want him to take. For instance, in the one timeline where he split the timeline, and in one timeline he tried to go to his base, and the other he tried to go to the PRT. They wanted him to go to the PRT, but they could see him on the monitor going to his base, so they got him stuck in a huge artificial traffic jam, and they knew, and Lisa knew he's going to drop this, this particular timeline like a hot potato, because he has no patience. Mr. Instant Road Rage. I've sort of prattled on about that. I had the darndest time figuring out how to put him in a situation where they could control which timeline that he chose. Because unlike him, they don't see him taking both decisions. They don't see. He's the only one that sees both timelines at the same time. So figuring that out was the hard part. Now, one of the things they're going to be doing now is that they realize that Coyle had all sorts of time bombs, as it were, prepped and ready to go. All sorts of things that would cause all sorts of devastation. And we're not just talking explosives either. His shtick is basically, among other things, he had a dossier of all the secret identities of the Empire 88. If he wasn't free, it was on a dead man switch. It was on a dead man switch and a timer. If he didn't log in once every day or so, type in a password, the computer in his base was programmed to release that information to the local news channels. In which case that would have triggered an all-out gang war. He had bombs, explosives laced throughout his lair. If he was caught, boom, up she goes. Even though that would have caused maybe a half dozen buildings sitting atop his base to collapse as well, and killing everybody inside. He routinely dealt with frustration by shooting co-workers in an alternate timeline and then dropping it. I forget if I covered that or not. I lost my train of thought. Another evil cult another evil cult mission in your D&D group. Simple. Have them run into a bunch of atheists. You know, here's an idea for you. They run into this atheist group. They're very militant about it, and they all gather together and meet and talk about how much more enlightened society will be once all religions are abolished, and when the intellectuals run society, and they have a little salute, and they have a flag with a funny looking spider on it, 4 legs all pointed to the right. You see where I'm going here? Don't laugh. Have them run into the Nazis, or a local equivalent of the French Revolution, or a communist party. Those groups were all atheist, humanist to boot, humanist and atheist, and they accomplished some of the most horrific evils mankind has ever seen on the face of the earth. Give them a taste of what it's like to deal with somebody who believes in no God, and gets militantly outraged at anybody who does. You get somebody playing an atheist. Let's be honest. 99 times out of 100, people claiming to be atheists or role-playing atheists or making a point about their what they are is that they're angry little children who are mad that Santa Claus didn't give them the cookie they wanted. Why didn't God do this for me? Why didn't God do that? Why didn't He do that? Why did He? I hate you, God. I'm not going to believe in you. So there, yeah. You got a great number of them are pissed off that God didn't tell them that whatever they wanted to do was okay. How dare God say that my sexual lifestyle isn't morally acceptable? We all just need love. What you want is a warm, wet hole. That's not love. You want to get your jimmies off, that's all it is. And you're mad that God has told you, no, this is not the way you should be behaving. This is a story. This is the story of man and God since the dawn of time. God comes in and says, do not do this. If you do it, it will kill you, and it will hurt the whole time it does. And the people come in and say, I'm going to do the thing. And they do the thing. And then they look again, and it turns around and eats their face off. And then they look at God and go, why did you do this to us? God didn't let me get away with what I wanted to do, so I'm not going to believe in Him anymore. Yeah, that'll teach him. See if you can't wrangle them into a position where their lives depend on the charity of some church workers. Oh, they're always fine with that. They'll sock it to a church, for free handouts. Then they'll get mad that the church is tax deductible. Love that one too. If we tax the churches, we wouldn't need any bull. If you tax the churches, you'd have the government up to its elbows in controlling the churches, and you'd still be broke because the government would waste every bit of money that it gets. You think you've been doing this over and over with every other group? What do you think this is going to change? If we tax this group, that group, and the other, we'll have plenty of money. And what happens is they tax that, they finally push through a law and get the right to tax this group. Surprise! The government gets a hold of money and flushes it down the toilet just like the rest of it. The problem isn't how much money's going in, it's how much they're spending. How much is going out. Little time for stupid people. Well, when it's your turn to be the DM, remember all these things. Sooner or later, you'll be the dungeon master. You can take them for a ride. I remember reading so many stories of these people. You had one player who was some social progressive, leftist, liberal, feminine, very vegetarian type. And proceeded to make life miserable for the other players. There was one case where, real nose ring feminist type was my she's my girlfriend, and she got into the game, and the party was getting together in this one, and they'd traveled to this one town, and they'd gotten word that there was a leech nearby who was an undead sorcerer who was going to try and raise an army of the undead. And that's why they were in that town. And this one player, this one feminist, this one nose ring feminist, who was playing a bisexual character, started inquiring around if gay marriage was legal in this township. And if they had gay marriage and the dungeon master, he was tired of it. He decided to play it straight. So he said, well, no, actually, we don't. It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of. And she proceeded to derail the entire campaign. And the others went along with it, because, she had tits. And she goes in there and she proceeds... and she starts a whole crusade to get this township to pass a law to make it legal to marry, to have gay marriage and bisexual marriage and lesbian marriage and and whatever kind of marriage and she succeeds. And just as they're holding the first ceremony for the first gay couple, the leech and his army march in and kill everybody. And she's all, you did this, the dungeon, and she just lights into the dungeon. You did this on purpose, rah, 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 rah. And he said, well, doggone it, I told you that you were there, that you were there to try and stop an undead abomination from raising an army of zombie killers. It's not my fault that you wasted all your time on your social agenda. She never came back to the game. She never came back to the game either. It's like, bye-bye. And then there was another one I read. This one was a real live wire. She, is absolute man hater. She wasn't the only female playing the game, though. That's the thing of it. In this next one. They had a couple of players who, one was just another female player, and this one girl came in, she, nose ring feminist, and she gave out a backstory that she was a member of she was a hermaphrodite. She was a member of this secret religion. Their entire goal was to perform this great ritual that would kill all the men in the world and make half the and make all the women in the world into hermaphrodites. Exterminate all the males and replace and turn humanity into chicks with dicks. And and the whole party is like, crap, we're on the rails and we're not getting off, are we? And so they went along with this, and this girl basically got her way the entire time, and eventually they got to the big, she finally got her way. She got her cult together, and they were all going to, and they were just at the point where they were going to perform the ceremony when the other female player, who happened to be playing a female barbarian warrioress, she had her character turn around and skewer the nose ring feminist character, run her through with a broadsword. Bringing everything to a dead halt and ending the ritual before it started. And she role played it out. She says she pulled out the sword out of the cultist, stood over and said, "I like my dick on men, bitch," and walked away. Oh, the transcendent druid form in the story in the Warcrafter. The transcendent. It's no, you have to. You don't have to spend real money to get it. It's one of these bonuses that you earn in the game. You have to get a particular rune that will alter your power, so that you no longer have to turn into a big hoot owl. You turn into a glowy, sparkly version of yourself. I forget what they're called. Are they called runes? Are they called inscriptions? I forget which. It's an enhancement that one of the crafting classes can learn. Yeah, the owlbear. Yeah, the moonkin. I'm sorry, that thing does look like it belongs on the Banana Split show. Come on. I wonder if anybody knows the reference I'm making when I say the Banana Split show. I feel old. I mean, that show was that show was a couple of years before my time. So I'm wondering if anybody gets the reference. The Banana Split. Okay, here, hold on. Let me. The Banana Split show was a television show that came out in like 1968, 1969. It was several cartoon shows that were tied together. The tie together was a live stage performance by people in animal costumes. Yeah, let me see here. Let me. Those are a couple of the characters from the Banana Split show. And there we go. Hanna-Barbera's The Banana Split Show. main lead monkey, Banana Split, right there. Let's see if we get the page. Get the page. It's by Sid and Marty Krofft. Is Flingle. The characters' names were Fleagle, Bingo, Drooper, and Snork. And they would even strap on musical instruments, perform hippy-dippy rock numbers. I remember once, tra la 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 la, tra la 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 la, tra la 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 la. Okay, let me see if I can find the music. Banana Splits show song. Turn it up here a little. If I can get it to boot up, come on. Yeah, that was the sound of Saturday mornings back in the 1969. Oh, great. I lost the music. Lost the... Yeah. My, oh my, oh my, oh my, oh my. Anyway. Oh, well, anyway. For those of you who've never seen it, let me pull up Moonkin. You were trying to be this badass, fantasy warrior. And let's see here if I can. There it is. That's your Moonkin. That is some stupid looking crap right there. It's... that's not a noble forest race. That's a mascot at an amusement park. That's tragic. It really is. Precisely. It's not much dignity to it, Yeah. Oh, my butt's hurting sitting like this. Yeah. Let's see if I can find that. See if I can find it. I don't think glyph of stars. Glyphs. That's what you need. Glyphs can be crafted by certain players with certain crafting skills, and you use the glyph to change your power. Glyph of stars. Let's see. The glyphs are the glyphs used to actually add some serious bonuses depending upon what you put in, but nowadays they're almost all cosmetic. Okay, let's see here. Okay, that's Glyph of Stars. That's a night elf on one side, and that's his Glyph of Stars form. Basically, he's just sort of bluish and ghostly and has sparkles. Not it doesn't say aspect of nature to me, but it's still preferable to the Moonkin. In your Moonkin form, your character gets a few bonuses to armor and a few bonuses to their ranged attacks, solar and lunar bursts, so on and so forth. So basically, it turns you into a blaster tank, but you don't move any faster. It also has the ability, the Moonkin form has the ability you can flutter down from a great height, rather than going, splat. And, but it just looks it's so slow, it's so clumsy, it just looks so stupid. Let me see here. Let's see here. Forgan Druid. They are supposed to be upgrading the Worgen models soon. As it currently stands, they're very low poly count, and so their faces don't change much. The Pandarans are the most recent designs, and they have, the Pandarans, their facial expressions actually change. Their mouths move, and their faces change expression and such. And we've been hoping for ages. That they would bring some of those improvements to the werewolves, because they just do not look right. They're snarling all the time, no matter what emote you're trying to do. Doesn't look good. Let's see, new Worgen model. The female Worgen. These are just art sketches, so we these they haven't installed them yet, so we're still waiting. They really need to get rid of those tusk things. They get those teeth sticking out like that. That's a little excessive. It just The Worgans were not. The Worgans were not playable characters for a long time. They were just random monsters in one particular area. But they decided to make them into a playable race. It's a really strange experience. You're playing like a Worgan ranger, and you're out in the you're out in the boonies, and you come across the mission line for the town that's suffering werewolf attacks, and you're walking through there as a full blown Worgan, and they come up to you. Have you been bitten? Have you been bitten? Please tell us you haven't been bitten. We're under attack by werewolves, and you're looking at them, and they're looking at you, and I don't think they're picking up a clue here, Chief. But it's been kind of a disappointing year for. It's been kind of a disappointing year for updates so far as World of Warcraft goes. Because they keep, the the newest races, they're playing favorites really. The people that run this game, the ones that they like the Horde better than they like the Alliance, so they're giving the Horde the cooler races. They're giving and they're dragging their heels on doing any updates. And these model updates should have been in at the first of the year. The fact that everybody's having to wait for them is just pointless. I'm really cheesed off because it looks like, they pushed back the Volperons. The Volperons basically are sort of a little goblin-sized fox race. They're in the Warcraft. They have one player who is Fennec. He's been turned into a Volperon archer, a Volperon hunter. But they pushed back introducing the Volperon race till God knows what update. And it looks like they're going to be giving them to the Horde to boot. Which really cheeses me off. Now, y'all going to be teasing me about that now. Y'all going to be teasing me about that now. In the original story, in the original story, Taylor Hebert in Worm, she had body issues. She was already a typical 15-year-old teenager. With all the I'm so fat, I'm so ugly, I'm so skinny, I'm too fat, I'm too skinny, I'm too ugly, I'm too, I'm all gross looking, I've got a poochy belly, I've got skinny legs. And, that's one of the things that most of the people that write fanfics, they give her she gets at least a little bit of a looks upgrade when she gets empowered. She gets stronger, she gets fitter, she gets abs. So yeah, she got the typical. So did the protagonist. So did Bayleaf. So did most of the characters. Everybody talks about that as that if that was sexist. I'm sorry. Just think about the logic of this, okay? First let's talk about the logic of this. In superhero comics, oh, they're so sexist. They make the men all beefy and manly, and they make the women all curvy and sexy. And I'm okay. Let's think about the logic of this. Somebody who spends their nights running, leaping from rooftop to rooftop, battling hand to hand with criminals and monsters and supervillains. They're not going to be fat and flabby. All right? Can we acknowledge this? And you got the feminists who say, "Oh, the men who look like that's just a male power fantasy." Well, I'm sorry. Have you seen the covers of women's romance novels? Explain to me how the beefy, macho, muscular-looking men on the covers of women's romance novels are a male power fantasy, considering the market. Explain that to me. What a load of horse apples. The feminists are just people who are just incredibly outraged to discover that men and women are different and that they have different ways of expressing sex appeal. And third, God forbid that anything should contain anything remotely attractive to the male gender. It's sexist, it's demeaning, it's a blah 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 blah. The problem, I'll say this as the problem isn't too much sexism in comics. They've got a problem with a little bit too much sex. That's a knife that cuts in both directions. They don't want to accept that. They got this comic out there. It's a comic about when she's 500 pounds. And she looks every bit of it. And she gains superpowers and becomes a superheroine. And it's all about how she's defying expectations and blah, 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 blah. And that's all the story they've got. That's all they've got. And we're supposed to believe that she's going to go into a career where she's chasing criminals down back alleys, and she's going to stay that size. She's either going to lose a few pounds or she's going to die of a heart attack. The whole feminist movement, this was described years ago. Rush Limbaugh described it this way. The feminist movement was a movement to give unattractive women access to the mainstream. The feminist movement is made up largely of women who are largely undesirable and who are incredibly angry about it. And they want to punish all males for having standards that do not include them. and it's been made worse every decade because every generation every generation of young women has been told how wonderful they are and how special they are and how and how they don't have to prove anything, blah 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 blah. And you got a bunch of girls that come into life thinking that the sun shines out their butts. Do young men get this treatment too? Oh yeah, you get an entitlement attitude anywhere. But with feminism, it's made it's a thing that has been focused entirely on a gender. They're out there trying to treat their biological functions as if they have mystic qualities. Stuff straight out of the eras of the Druids. Rhapsodizing about their menstrual blood and the cycles of their body, and we're one with women are one with nature, and it's just and how they've used my inner goddess. They have a virtually pseudo-mystical perception of what it means to be female. You are women, here you roar. You're magical and mystical and oh so special, and like at one comedian parties, women literally throw their arms out of socket, patting themselves on the back about how wonderful they are for being a mother. She does the hardest job in the world. She's a mother. And these girls who grow up, they go into college, they go out into the world, and they find out to their incredible surprise that nobody cares. That the universe really doesn't give a crap. That they are woman, spelled with 3 Y's. Or that they are in touch with nature and the cycles of the moon and everything else. And that maybe, things like personality and physical attractiveness actually count for something. You are women, hear us snore. That's the problem. That's the problem with this Captain Marvel movie. Stolen name, by the way. There's a long story of copyrights and patents behind that game between Marvel and DC about the name Captain Marvel. But that's the problem with the actress who plays the Captain Marvel movie. That's the problem with the people that did the Ghostbusters all-female cast remake. That's the they want a special award and special recognition. And we now present the Nobel Prize to this group for performing in a movie while having a vagina. And they think that they should be above criticism for how badly a job they did just because they have a vagina. How dare you say our performance? How dare you say my performance was wooden? I have a vagina. How dare you say that our Ghostbusters remake wasn't funny or entertaining? We have vaginas. And I love how anybody who complains about this nonsense is called a troll now. You're a troll. You're a troll. No, I'm an annoyed customer. You know what a troll is? A troll is some nose-ringed, toucan-haired feminist who was never going to watch the movie anyway, throwing a temper tantrum because they don't have a lesbian in the main protagonist slot. That's the reason they do this crap. They don't care if... They just want to see... They love making these outrageous claims to see just how high they can get the corporations to jump to please them. What's really sad is the ones that'll do everything they want, everything that they ask. You want a picture of the sadness that comes to this? Oh, excuse me. You want a picture of just how sad this is? Let me give you a name. J.K. Rowling. Now, back about 2 or 3 years ago, I was probably, I felt like the only voice in the wilderness. Because I'm like, why is she changing these things? Why is she saying these things now? She's just pandering. It's stupid. It's craven. And everyone's like, oh, you're just mad that she made Dumbledore gay. And you homophobe, blah, 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 blah. Now, I don't like the fact that she made Dumbledore gay. I wouldn't have liked it if she'd made Dumbledore gay in the book. What I really don't like is that she didn't make Dumbledore gay in the book, and now that the book is printed, she's coming out trying to change it after after the fact. And now I've been complaining about it, and now everybody's getting sick of it. There's a meme running around that says, J.K. Rowling's latest book reveals that you, the reader, were gay all along. She's out there, she changes, she comes back after that, she changes the fact, she makes Dumbledore gay, she makes Hermione black, even though it's written in the books that Hermione had a white face. Okay? White! And if it was so important, why didn't she change that for the movies? Why didn't she have them put a little black girl to play the character? No, she didn't. All it takes is she wrote a book, a series of books about that was mostly about a school of mostly white kids in Scotland. Oh, imagine that! And now her idiot friends are guilting her into coming up with all these little tweets and little notices that just just overthrow everything that's already down in the novels. Funny, I sat down and reread the novels, and gee, I don't remember any. Despite what J.K. Rowling says, I can't seem to find the place where Hermione was black, or Dumbledore was gay, or Dobby the house elf deep-throated a Nimbus 2000. I just don't remember those scenes for some reason. She thinks that she's going to maintain, instead of by writing new good books or movies, she thinks that she's going to maintain her relevance by truckling to whatever annoying, noisy squealer comes along next. And all she's doing is she's not getting new fans, she's just pissing off the old ones. She's a weather van. She has she's demonstrated that she doesn't have any she's tossed. There's a verse in the Bible says people with no foundation, they're tossed. They're like waves of the sea, tossed by every wind. She's like the poster child for mass media moguls today. And she makes it happen because she's a one-woman media franchise, and she's manipulated she's tossed to and fro by every wind. She's just ruined any respect I had for the woman. She's a dithering ninny. Yeah, she made her money. The question is, why is she so scared now? If she was trying to suck up her way to the top of the ladder, you could almost understand it. If she was out there still writing books and still trying to, keep at the top of the ladder, you could understand it, almost. But no, her magnum opus is finished. No, she's doing movies now, and she's kind of sucking it hard at that. I've seen I've seen the Newt Scamander movie, the first Newt Scamander movie. I rather liked it. Newt Scamander is a very different kind of protagonist. I grew to like him almost immediately. He reminded me a great deal of the more mild-mannered Doctor Who in many ways. He wasn't, he wasn't a swashbuckling hero. He was just a very kind, very gentle man who was passionate and compassionate towards magical creatures. Dr. Dolittle, and I liked it. The movie wasn't perfect It had some flaws, it had some problems with the story, but it still was pretty great. And then I just recently saw, I didn't see The Crimes of Grindelwald. I saw a comprehensive review of it though. That described the story and the main plot point. And basically Rowling came back and took everything that was good in the first movie and crapped all over it. Just to give you the main idea, though, the one that really sticks out. You remember the nice, sweet witch, who could see the future, the nice, sweet witch who could read people's minds, and she fell for the little round baker. You remember her? This sweet, kind character. And Rowling basically ruined her character. She had this nice sweet character. She ends up in the second movie. She kidnaps the little round baker and uses spells on him to mind control him into marrying her. No explanation, no real reason. At the end of the movie, the same nice, sweet girl who had never heard a fly ends up joining Grindelwald. She's crapped them, she's done. She doesn't know. It's terrible. Okay, bad. Awful. And that's just one plot point, okay? Just one. The rest of it, I'll probably watch The Crimes of Grindelwald if I can find it on Netflix or on Prime. I haven't been successful in digging it out of the archives yet, but I already know going in. That it's a dog's dinner of bad ideas. She's Rowling just. She shot the load. She's those 7 books were all she had in her, and she barely got those out. I'm sorry. The last book in the series was a serious letdown. I'll say that much. I'll say that straight up, because in all the time she'd been writing, she hadn't figured out even the most basic concepts of writing. There are days I wish I could, I fantasize about just sitting the woman down, taking her books out and going, you see, you made a mistake here. You shouldn't have done this. This is what you should have done. This would have been so much better. You shouldn't have, put so much emphasis on this one character's perspective and left everybody else's out. And you see how boring the middle section of this last book is? That's because you've got the entire audience following them around, wandering in the wilderness, doing nothing. Worse, you've got them listening to the radio, hearing about how all the action is happening someplace else, and you never let the audience see it. The time turner. What the hell were you thinking, woman? And I would just gone down the list with her. I think the only calamity is that if I did go ahead and do if something like that ever actually did happen, she would listen to all There are two terrible scenarios where, one, she doesn't listen to anything I say, and she does, and she deliberately goes in the opposite direction and does everything worse with the next movie she writes. Or she does listen to everything I say and goes overboard in the other direction, Rowling's day in the sun is over. She doesn't want to accept that. She would be 1,000 times better off letting somebody else write the movies. Because and what's really sad is it's blind luck as to whether a good author would get in there to do that, because she's easily led around by the nose. She's led around by the nose so easily. This is why you had so many problems with the movies. Because they ended up with a director, after the first couple of movies, they ended up with a director who didn't know his ass from his face. And who was obsessed with Hermione. And so it went from being a story of Harry Potter to being a Hermione Sue fanfiction. But I've griped about her enough. I've griped about her enough. Let's find somebody else to gripe about. Load them up in the rack. I want my target practice. Of course, what do I know? I'm a fan fiction writer. I write, and I'm a webcomic writer and a fan fiction writer who's got maybe a couple of who's got a grand total of one unfinished all original work to his name. The Sanguine Chronicles. It sounded like a clever idea when I started it, but the more I go on with it, there's just not enough there. There's just not enough stuff there to make it bloom. You know what I'm saying? It's really, I'm no Joss Whedon, and I can't, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Buffy the Vampire Slayer is a good example of what I'm talking about here. Buffy the Vampire Slayer was a one-joke movie. I remember when it was just a movie. The first thing it came out with was the movie, and it was awful. I saw it in the theaters. It was a crappy written thing. It's just bleh. And Joss Whedon managed to take that complete goose egg of a movie and turn it into a brilliant horror adventure teen series, a TV series. Me, I'm in the position of the guy that did the movie. The Sanguine Chronicles was basically my idea. My idea was to basically subvert everything about vampire stories, and especially the young adult market for vampire and monster stories that Twilight inflicted on us. But after I got past that joke, it just sort of lost its way. It developed into it started splintering off with a little bit of religious commentary and about commentary about Christian faith, and then I just really didn't know, and talking about it was parodying various things, but most of the parody just didn't fly, and I kept introducing new ideas into it, that plot twists that were just my so-called plot twists were the equivalent of taking copper pipe and banging it with a hammer into as many bizarre shapes as I could manage. Things were not flowing right. It's a project that just really wasn't going anywhere and just had to be left to be. Kind of feel the same way about the Fellowship of Heroes. Same story, I've come to a conclusion. You can either write a good fiction story or you can write a good uh, Christian book, a book about faith and religion and such. But you're rarely going to be able to, if you're going to write one kind of book, write one kind of book. Don't try to write two or three at the same time. You're not going to very easily fit a message about your beliefs or faith into the adventure story you're trying to write. It's not going to fit well. At least it does not for me. There are some writers that have managed it. There are some writers that do it all the time. But I'm not one of them. No, I've not uploaded the archive of our. I've not uploaded the Sanguine Chronicles onto the archive of our own page. No, I haven't. I think I should probably just let it rest in peace. I would have to dismantle it and start all over again to get anywhere, and it would might as well not even. It would need so many changes that it wouldn't even be the same work. I was trying to subvert too many things, and I forgot that some of the things that I was subverting, they're tropes in that particular type of story for a reason. Now, how many? I don't know how many of you've seen. How many of you seen that Nicolas Cage remake with the Sorcerer's Apprentice? It was the Sorcerer's Apprentice. Starring Nicolas Cage as the sorcerer. And it was supposed to be an urban fantasy. Now, by and large, it did a fairly good job of being a fairly good urban fantasy. The problem is it made one huge, massive mistake. At the very beginning of the movie. It had to, at the very beginning of the movie, Nicolas Cage does a voiceover, and he basically gives a synopsis of the whole setup. About two wizards battling, and they were there's a destined apprentice who's supposed to fix everything, and blah 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 blah. and then it goes into the movie. Now, the thing of it is that in an urban fantasy, when you want to start an urban fantasy, the first step is that you start in the mundane and slowly reveal the paranormal, the magical, the what have you. As the protagonist has this whole unseen world revealed to them. Yeah. It's a trope because it works. It's how the urban fantasy genre works. You start out in a typical kitchen or living room or library, and then you notice the cat wearing a magical wizard's hat up on the shelf. And suddenly things, you start out the normal and swerve off into the extraordinary over time. All the details that were revealed at the beginning of the movie with this voiceover narration, complete with animation, this is something that should not have been discovered, should not have been revealed to anyone, even the audience, until about halfway into the movie, at about in the middle of the second act. Because, it took away all the suspense, all the sense of discovery and wonder and surprise. It's like they gave you, it's like they ran up to you at the beginning of the mystery, of a Sherlock Holmes mystery, and told you, this is the good guy, this is the bad guy, this is the guy that committed the murder, this is the victim. You'll be seeing them in about 15 minutes. It failed. And this is one of the problems that I had with writing the Sanguine Chronicles, is that it's basically an urban fantasy horror, and the bits and pieces that I were changing around, I didn't know what I gave too much exposition at the beginning of the story. And so much of what would have enriched the story, made it grow, made it build, was lost, and then I was left flailing around because I'd given away all the good parts of the story ahead of time. And the point that the protagonist and his friends were at, that was about in Buffy the Vampire Slayer terms, this was them about halfway into the first season, with all the most intriguing discoveries already handed out and panned around. It was a failed project, put it bluntly. I've got a couple of ideas for Noel and the Travelers. Oh, they got several things. That's the thing of it, is that the Alliance, they've got several things that they're working on at the same time. They got, among other things, they're trying to prepare for their first real Endbringer attack, because they know, as far as they know, Leviathan is still going to show up in Brockton Bay. Second of all, you've got all these other movers and shakers out there that they've got to, have something on the ball or on the shelf ready for them to at least try to deal with them. Like you got the Teeth, the Slaughterhouse Nine, the Elite, which are really a minor plot point in the original books. You've got Accord, who is in his own way a potential terrible evil that is really underplayed. And then you have, and you have the Endbringers, and you have Zion himself, and what else? But at the same time, you've got all these other mundane little things, like they've still got to deal with the Empire 88, and they still got to deal with they've still got Bakuda waiting out in there in the wings, and they've also got the Yangban in China. You also hear about the various monsters that they talk about, the sleeper, whatever that is, and literally whatever that is just described as one of those S-class horrors that threatens the world, but it's over in Europe, so nobody cares. And what is the other one that's basically a gigantic living dust storm? Or is it? But anyway, lots of things you got to decide whether how are they going to deal with them, whether they're going to deal with them, when they'll deal with them. Ash Beast, yeah, that's the one. There's little to nothing in the original Worm or in the Worm resource files as to what the Sleeper or the Ash Beast actually are. And there's also the group called the Blasphemies, and basically he jam-packed the world of Worm end to end with horrible suckage, and tragedies and horrors and monsters of every sort. At some point, the protagonist and Taylor and the protagonist and they're all going to have to go, we can't fix everything. There are some things that are going to have to be left to somebody else to deal with. Everybody's talking about how, everybody's already talking about how, in the sequel, they're going to be going to Azeroth, in the World of Warcraft. Well, thank you for cluing the writer in. That's very nice of you, letting me know what I have planned. But I'm not sure that they are, or if they are, it's going to be a very brief stopover. Because realistically speaking, the main reason that they are such an influence in the Wormverse is because they're an outside context problem. They're outside the box. They're an outside paradigm. They're something new. That's something that doesn't fit any of the rules. They go to Azeroth they are going to be a lot less special, to put it briefly. And the question is whether they're even going to be willing to go, because, after dealing with one world-ending cosmic horror apocalypse, they're not going to be. I don't think they're going to be too thrilled to be thrown onto a world where there's a new cosmic world-ending cosmic horror waiting in the wings every other week. I don't know about Earthshin. I don't care about Earthshin. I'm going to ignore Earthshin. Mm. No. Now, many questions. Not sure if I have the answers. Not sure if I'm remembering the questions properly. But, I'm thinking a lot of different possible ideas. I've been just goofy ideas off the top of my head. Like an idea for a crossover between Worm and the Tick. Spoon! Poor Taylor Hebert ending up as the Tick's sidekick. I know of at least one person who's written a crossover between Worm and One Punch Man. The problem is that One Punch Man, he's oblivious to it. He doesn't realize that that the PRT thinks he's a villain. It goes very, very, very badly for many of the villains that try to get it his way. And I've seen one crossover between My Hero Academia and, again, the Tick, where Izuku ends up as the Tick's sidekick even before he gains any powers. And there's another one where My Hero Academia, where Izuku does get a quirk. He does get a quirk. He does get a power. The problem is it's called minor banishment. It lets him banish or disintegrate any up to 10 grams of anything. At touching range, 10 grams. That's all. About the weight of about a handful of pennies, about 4 or 5 pennies. And the whole story is about him leveraging that power until he's basically stomping major, kicking major butt. Let's see, the Avengers, the one with the Avengers getting mental health help. Let me see. Let me pull up there. It says face fanfiction.net. Let's look at my list of subscriptions here. I have probably got 100 or more stories that and I'm just waiting for updates. One of my favorites is I'm still waiting for an update for this. It's almost been a year. It's called The Havoc Side of the Force. I've got 2 or 3 that are crossovers between Harry Potter and Star Wars. And you'd be surprised at how well they work. Got several others that are crossovers between Harry Potter and the Avengers. That's the thing about the superhero genre. You can cross the superhero genre over with just about anything. I've seen crossovers between Young Justice and Pokemon, and it works. You can throw anything into a, this is Marvel and DC both. Marvel, you can have fantasy, you can have sci-fi, you can have space, aliens, you can have creatures under the earth, you can have things out of the prehistoric past or the distant future. You can have time travel. You can have anything. It's just, it has rules, but they're rather difficult to nail down. In some ways, there are very strict rules for superhero stories, and there are others that are in some ways there are no rules at all. In some ways there are very strict rules for writing superhero genre. And others, it's immensely liberating because it just seems to be no limitations at all, and both at the same time. Okay, let's see. Magical Girl Escalation Taylor. That's where Taylor Hebert, she basically becomes a magical girl, complete with a talking magic wand. Heroes Assemble, which is Harry Potter and Heroes Assemble, which is Harry Potter and the Avengers. The Jedi of Little Whinging, which is Star Wars and Harry Potter. Lex Marks the Spot, which is a crossover between Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Justice League. Basically, Xander gets transported. He gets transported to the world of Justice League and takes Lex Luthor's place. And then proceeds to mess with everybody. Let's see. Fate Khalid, Prisma Taylor. That's another magical. Fate Stay Night Worm crossover. Pokemon and Worm. Plot Bunny Ranch. Magic School Days. Magic School Days is a My Little Pony Harry Potter crossover. And it's a little, it's kind of crackficky, but it's also hilarious and adorable. It's increasingly funny is that the main six find out about how Dumbledore has been manipulating poor Harry Potter's life. And they open about 20 different kinds of whoop-ass on him. And it all starts because the Cutie Mark Crusaders, the Magic School Days is where the Cutie Mark Crusaders get in a conversation with Discord and happen to mention that they wish they could go to Magical Unicorn School too. All together. And Discord informs them, hey, I could enroll you in Magic School. And he enrolls them in Magic School in another entire universe. And it is hilarious. It is adorable. Some of it's disturbing, but it is funny. I think the author has a little trouble with sometimes taking the story, just running wild sometime. But she's still, it's still a great story, and I've been following it. Let's see. The last update was the 19th. No, pardon me. This year, the last update was March 15th of this month. The March 15th. Just a week ago. So. There's a Transformers crossover with Worm, where Taylor Hebert gains the ability to build Autobots. Balancing the Scales, which is another Star Wars crossover. Star Wars and Harry Potter crossover. Dumbledore is of the light, Voldemort is of the dark, and both consider the boy who lived to be the linchpin of all their plans. What neither could have ever anticipated was the time a lost lady of the Sith entering the stage with her somewhat wary girlfriend. Yeah, it's one of those. Now, Harry is in the nurturing hands of Darth Revan and Bastila Shan, who will gladly guide him to achieve his destiny. I forgot that was a lesbian girlfriend thing. Get tired of that. Whilst I linger on top of the land, that's Taylor Hebert. Taylor Hebert ends up getting transported to Harry Potter's London. She uses her, it hasn't gotten very far, but she uses her bug powers in front of a bunch of wizards and they not only assume she's a witch, they accuse her of using mind control magic. Because one of the bugs she controlled was Rita Skeeter. And the story basically begins with her in Azkaban. And two of the cellmates on her floor are Lestrange and Sirius Black. It's making for a very interesting read. I'll tell you that. This one is there's one called Adorable Murder Beasts. It's a cross between Young Justice and Pokemon. Self-insert. The protagonist wakes up in the Young Justice universe, and it turns out he's a Pokemon trainer, and he has several Pokemon already. It's a self-insert, and it kind of grated on my nerves because the protagonist is written as a Muslim. So I haven't exactly been following that one too closely. I'm like, no. There's a Spider-Man and Worm crossover where Taylor Hebert becomes Brockton Bay's version of Spider-Woman. Arachne. The thing of it is that if you've watched Into the Spider-Verse, you know about the experimental spider who keeps traveling through the dimensions. The Alchemax Spider 38 survived to deliver its bite to 3 more individuals. Yeah. It's only got this one's only got 11 chapters, but it looks to be pretty good. Also, kind of funny. Let's see, Bridge of Ice. Bridge of Ice is Star Wars, another Star Wars Harry Potter crossover. The Rebel Alliance finds Harry Potter basically frozen in ice on Hoth. It seems that Hoth is actually Earth after a really, really, really long ice age, of which Harry Potter is the only survivor. Now, there's one here. It's by Perfect Lionheart. Perfect Lionheart is a very controversial writer. He manages to upset a lot of people very easily. Sort of in the way I do, but I've come to like his writing. He's written a story called Stepping on Worm. It's a self-insert story. Again, the character is dropped into Worm with 0 powers, 0 funds, and he has to stepladder his way up to save the day. And well, it's a fun read. I'll say that. Some of it's eccentric, some of it's hilarious, pee your pants funny, and some of it just bat poo crazy. It's currently 15 chapters long. The 15th chapter is the most recent one. It was posted February 8th. He was apparently being, he claims he was being uh, doxxed, uh, basically harassed and persecuted over the internet. And he basically posted a "screw you all" message as chapter 15 to the people that were doing it. There are a lot of Harry Potter Star Wars crossovers. There's one here called "Shiver Me Timbers." That's the one that's the Hoth crossover, where they find him frozen in a glacier in Hoth. Holy crap! How many pages of these things do I have? Some of these haven't updated in almost a year. A lot of them have. A lot of them haven't. There's a story like a redheaded stepchild. It's a Harry Potter fan fiction. The one difference at the start of the story is that Harry Potter not only has his mother's eyes, he has her hair too. Bright red hair. And when he goes to platform 9 3/4, he gets mistaken for a Weasley. And it snowballs from there. It is brilliantly hilarious. It gets it just gets completely cracky by the end, but it is funny as heck to read. Let's put it this way: he ends up adopted into the Weasley clan, unofficially then officially, and so does Hermione and Luna, complete with red hair. By the end of the story, let's put it this way: by the beginning of the story, Professor McGonagall is hitting the Glenfiddich pretty hard. By the end of the story, she is making Jaeger bombs out of calming potions dropped into Glenfiddich. And there's one here. It's called Weasley Girl. Weasley Girl. The idea is there's two stories in the series so far. The second one is Weasley Girl: Secrets of the Past, and it's a Harry Potter fan fiction with one change. Instead of it being Ron Weasley, it's Veronica Weasley. And no, there's no romance between them. And no, there's no romance between Veronica and Hermione either. But it dramatically changes so many different things in subtle ways. For one thing, Ron doesn't have the Veronica doesn't have the same level of inferiority complex that her male counterpart does, because she, not her little sister, was the first female, the first daughter born into the clan in a long time, and she's not picked on as much or in the same way as Ron was. That's what always gets me about that, is that everybody dumps on Ron. Everybody dumps on Ron. Everybody loves the Weasley twins, The Weasley twins poisoned their baby brother for shits and giggles. That's the truth. You'll read the stories. They would sneak untested potions into his food when he wasn't looking. Which explains, one, why he ate like a pig. He was trying to eat quickly before somebody poisoned him. Before somebody else at the table stole his food or poisoned him. And two, it explains why he had such an inferiority complex. Because can you imagine how that is? You know, your brothers use you as a guinea pig, and your parents can barely bother to pay attention when you suddenly start sprouting feathers. That changes things up. Another thing that changes up is that she's a lot, Ron, the girl, is a lot closer to her sister Ginny, for obvious reasons. And in fact, the fact that they are so close to each other shorts out the whole plot with the evil diary. I don't want to tell you how. I don't want to tell you how or why. But you read the story yourself, you'll see it's hilarious, and it's also brilliant writing. The person to register, Hyaroo, Hyaroo. It's a Weasley girl, and the results, it's a perfect illustration of subtle changes, subtle initial changes making big differences down the road that you don't expect. It's brilliantly written in that regard. I really hope that the author starts updating again. It has been over a year since the second story was updated. I'm like, poke, 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 poke. When are you going to write? Poke, 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 poke. I'm as bad as anybody, I guess. There's another example of that is when Harry missed the trick step. One tiny change, again, utterly changes the outcome of the rest of the novels, and it follows logical path. Let's see. There are so many Harry Potter and Star Wars crossovers. There's one that I'm still waiting for an update. It hasn't been updated in 2 years. Still haven't found what I'm looking for. That's the title. By Catherine 518. There's so many stories here that are just sat and languished for lack of love. I don't know. Harry Potter times, yeah, it's only, it's in my Oddments collection. Harry Potter and My Little Pony. It's only a bit story idea. I've got a couple other, I think maybe another chapter of ideas for that, but nothing really concrete. But mm, my. I've literally got hundreds of stories here that I'm waiting for updates on. All right, all right, all right. Yeah. They always seem to come up with two different variations on the idea of Harry Potter in Star Wars. Either magic is somehow conflicting with the Force, or magic and the Force are exactly the same thing. Uh, I don't know which idea I'd subscribe to as a better idea. Itchy spots on the legs. Let's see, archive of our own. I'll admit I spent the last day or so just waiting to see what the next update of commentary is. I live for the commentary. Okay. Excuse me, man. I just got a little itchy spot on the side of my foot here. Difficult to reach. Let me mark. Just select all. Mark red. I gotta mark them all approved here. I do apologize. I'm not updated the comics in far too long. I just. In case you want to, just look at the update times between the last chapter and the current chapter of the Warcraft. That'll give you an idea of how long it took me just to tap out that one chapter. I was getting maybe a few sentences a day. But where to put that? Where to put that? Okay, let's see. Oh, the story I'm looking for is Archive of Our Own, Damaged Defenders. That's the one you're looking for. It's on Archive of Our Own, Damaged Defenders. Okay, it is midnight now. It is midnight. Midnight! So, I'm going to go ahead and call it a night tonight. I keep promising myself. I keep making promises. I've got to stop making promises to myself because all I seem to do with promises is break them. It's better just not to say anything and surprise myself. A little dry spot in the throat. I've been waking up lately with the end of my tongue dry and stuck to the roof of my mouth. Ow. To the point that the tip of my tongue is sore all the time. It's an odd sensation, let me tell you. I'm like, is the air in my house that dry? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call it a night. I'm going to say thank you all for watching, for reading, for your pledges, for your commissions, for your donations, for all that you do. It's so wonderful that you're you. And you all take care of yourselves and have a good night, okay? God bless, and good night.